Meanwhile, the desire to express myself grew. A few signs I used to become less and less advocate. My failure to make myself understood were invariable, followed by the outburst of passion. I felt if invisible hands were holding me, and I made frantic effort to free myself. I struggled. Not struggling helped matters, but the spirit of resistance was strong within me. I generally break down in tear and physical exhaustion. If my mother happened to be near, I crept into her arms, too miserable even to remember the causes of tempest. After a while, the need to some means of communication because so urgent that this outburst occurred early, sometimes hourly. My parents were deeply grieved and perplexed. We lived a long way from any school from for the blind or the deaf, and it seemed unlikely that anyone would came to such an out to the way was to Zambia to teach a child who was both deaf and blind. Indeed, my friends and relatives sometimes doubted whether I could not be tough. My mother's only ray to hope came from Dickens' American North. She had read his accounts of Laura Brushburn and remember vaguely that she was deaf and blind. It had been educated, but she also remembered with a hopeless blank that Dr. Howey, who had discovered the way to teach the deaf and blind, had been dead many years. His method to had probably died with him, and if they had not, how was a little girl in a far off town in Alambia to receive the benefits of them? When I was about 6, my father heard of an Emmett Ockes in Balmary who had been success in many cases that had seemed hopeless. My parents at once determined to take me to Baltimore to see if anything could be done for my eyes. The journey, which I remember well, was very pleasant. I made friends with many people on the train. A lady gave me a box of shells. My father made holes in those so that I could shrink them, and for a long time they kept me happy and contented. The conductor too was kind. Often when he went his rounds, I clung to his coattails while he collected and punched the tickets. His pouch with which he let me play was light and toy. Curled up in a corner of the seat, I assumed myself for hours making funny little holes in the bites of cardboard. My auntie made me a big doll out of towels. It was the most common shapeless things. The improved dolls with no nose, mouth, ear, or eyes. Nothing that even the imagination of a child could convert into a face. Curiously enough, the absence of eyes struck me more than all the other defense put together. I pointed this out to everybody with a provoking persistently, but no one seemed equally to task of proving the door with the eye. A bright idea, however, shot into my mind, and the problem was solved. I stumbled off the seat and searched until I found my auntie's cape, which was trembled with a large bed. I pulled two beads of the indicator to her that I wanted her to sew them on my door. She raised my hands to her eyes in a questioning way, and I nodded energetically. The beads were sewed in the right places, and I could not contain myself for joy. But immediately I lost all the interest in the doll. During the whole trip, I did not have one felt of temper. There were so many things to keep my mind. my mind and fingers busy. When we arrived in the Baltimore, Dr. Kishmam received us kindly, but he could not do anything. He said, however, that I could be educated and advised my father to consult Dr. Alexander Bell to Washington, who could be able to give me information about the schools and teachers of deaf or blind children. Acting on the doctor's advice, we went immediately to Washington to see Dr. Bell. My father, with a sad heart and many misgivings, I wholly unconscious of his anxious find pleasure in the excitement of moving from place to place. Child as I was, I at once felt to tenderness and sympathy which endured Dr. Bell to so many hearts as his wonderful achievement enlists the admiration he had me and his knew while I esteemed his watch, and he made his strike for me. He understood my signs, and I knew it, and he loved him at once. But I did not dream that interview would be the door through which I should pass from darkness into light, from isolation of friendship, companionship, knowledge, love. Dr. Bell advised my father to write Mr. Anqui's director of the Perkins Institution in Boston, the scenes of Dr. Harvey, great labor for the blind, and ask him if he had a teacher companion to being a education. This my father did at once, and in a few weeks there came a kind letter from Mr. Anagos with a confirming assurance that a teacher had been found. This was the summer of 1886, but Miss Sullivan did not arrive until the following Marches. Thus I came up out the Egypt and stood before Siani, and the power therein touched my spirit and gave it sight, so that I beheld many wonders. And from this sacred mountain I heard a voice which said, knowledge is love and light and vision.